Hello, everybody. My name is Yaman, and I provide daily updates on Tesla, markets, and technology. Let's get started. Markets are mixed today. We have a lot of news. So settle back. Markets are mixed. Nvidia is down 2%. Amazon is down 2%. We're going to talk about why Oracle is down 4%. Visa, MasterCard are down. Energy stocks are up. I'm guessing oil prices are up. Yes, oil price up 2% to $64 per barrel. And the yield curve is down about a basis point across the curve. 30-year Treasury yield is at 4.75. 10-year is at 4.13. Let's get started with the daily article. Wall Street mixed with Powell in spotlight for rate outlook. Wall Street's main indices were mixed on Tuesday as the recent tech-fueled rally took a breather, while investors awaited Fed Chair Jerome Powell's remarks on the economy amid conflicting signals from policymakers. Powell's comments could be crucial to shaping interest rate expectations at a time when the Fed's rate cut last week has lifted equities and investors are hoping for further reductions to sustain the rally. Some officials argue for measured cuts going forward to keep inflation in check. Chicago Fed President Austin Goolsbee said on Tuesday that inflation cools off, the central bank has some space to cut its interest rate target. The market is pricing 2 more cuts this year that could potentially be at risk if there is a little bit of hawkish tilt this week, especially from Powell, said Charlie Ripley, senior investment strategist for Alliance Investment Management. S&P financial sector hit a record high and was last up 1%, while energy companies rose 2%. The gains helped the benchmark index hit an intraday all-time high. Losses in Nvidia, which slipped 2.2% after hitting an intraday record high in the previous session, and Amazon.com, down 2.3%, weighed on the Nasdaq. Gains in Boeing and banks such as Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan boosted the Dow to hit an intraday record high. Boeing gained 3.4% after securing an order from Uzbekistan Airways worth over $8 billion, while talks for a Chinese order were ongoing. A September reading of S&P Global's flash manufacturing PMI fell to 52 from 53 in August. Part of Wall Street's resilience in September, a historically weak month for equities, can be traced to strength in technology stocks and renewed optimism around AI-linked trading. Some analysts have, however, raised concerns of stretched stock valuations. Others argue that markets could sustain their current multiples if the upcoming earnings season passes without any red flags. Quote, an accommodative Fed and an economy that accelerates into 2026 should allow the market to maintain its current multiple, leaving earnings growth to drive continued U.S. equity gains, Goldman Sachs analysts wrote in a note. During the past 40 years, S&P 500 generated 15% median 12-month return when the Fed resumed cutting interest rates against a backdrop of continued economic growth. However, uncertainty around the Trump administration's policy continues to pose risks. Kenvue, the maker of popular pain medication Tylenol, rose 3.9% but is yet to fully recover from a 7.5% plunge on Monday when the U.S. president linked autism to childhood vaccine use and the taking of Tylenol by women when pregnant. Let's move on to Amazon news. Amazon trial begins on FTC claims it duped Prime subscribers. That's a big claim. Amazon duped tens of millions of Prime customers by signing them up for without consent and locking them in with overly complex cancellation methods. The US FTC will seek to show at a trial starting in Seattle on Tuesday. The civil case against the online retail giant and 3 of its executives is a key test of the FTC's tough-on-tech stance and could force Amazon to pay damages worth hundreds of millions of dollars, plus fines up to $53,000 per violation. It could also damage the image of a company that describes itself as obsessed with making customers' lives easier. Amazon has denied wrongdoing by the company or executives, saying Prime's terms are clearly disclosed and there are several ways to cancel. The case is part of a bipartisan crackdown on what the FTC says are deceptive cancellation practices. The FTC started probing Amazon's subscription practices during the President Donald Trump's first term, and the case was filed during Joe Biden's presidency. In April, the FTC sued Uber, alleging it deceptively marketed its Uber One subscription and sued the operators of gym chain LA Fitness in August for burdensome membership cancellation requirements. Those probes began during the Biden administration. Prime subscribers pay $14.99 for free expedited shipping, access to Amazon's streaming video service, and other benefits. Amazon recruits new subscribers by offering free trials on its website using pitches such as get free same-day delivery. But the FTC says Amazon has failed to clearly and conspicuously disclose to customers that selecting that option will enroll them in Prime and eventually result in monthly subscription charges. While Amazon tested changes that would make those terms clearer between 2017 and 2022, executives several times rejected them to prevent signups from declining, the FTC said. Moving on to NVIDIA. NVIDIA's $100 billion OpenAI play raises big antitrust issues. There's a theme here today, isn't there? The $100 billion partnership between dominant AI chipmaker NVIDIA and leading AI company OpenAI could give both companies an unfair advantage over their competitors, experts say. The move underscores the increasingly overlapping financial interests of the various tech giants developing advanced AI systems and the potential for a dwindling number of key players to stave off smaller rivals. It raises significant antitrust concerns, said Andre Barlow, the antitrust lawyer at Doyle, who also noted that Trump administration has taken a pro-business approach to regulations, removing hurdles that would slow AI growth. And while unleashing U.S. dominance in artificial intelligence by clearing away regulations and creating incentives for growth is a top priority for Trump, a Department of Justice official said last week that spurring innovation by protecting AI competition through antitrust enforcement is also part of Trump's AI plan. Moving on to Morgan Stanley to offer crypto trading on E-Trade platform through a zero-hash tie-up. Morgan Stanley will offer cryptocurrency trading on its platform E-Trade from the first half of 2026 through a partnership with Zero Hash, an infrastructure provider for the digital assets. At launch, E-Trade clients will be able to trade Bitcoin, the world's largest crypto token, as well as Ether and Solana, a spokesperson for Morgan Stanley said on Tuesday. Moving on to ECB's Kipgon says 2029 for digital euro launch. The European Central Bank eyes 2029 as a realistic timeline for launching a digital euro, essentially an online payment wallet backed by the central bank, ECB board member Piero said on Tuesday. The person said the European Parliament and European Council and the Executive European Commission may have their respective positions ready by May. Trump appends shutdown talks with Democrats as deadline nears. This is pretty important news for the markets. Trump said Democrats must drop their demands for renewing healthcare subsidies and ending Medicaid cuts before he'll agree to negotiate with congressional leaders at a meeting they planned for Thursday, ratcheting up the risk of an October 1 government shutdown. After reviewing the details of the unserious and ridiculous demands being made by the minority radical left Democrats in return for their votes to keep our thriving country open, I have decided that no meeting with their congressional leaders could possibly be productive, Trump said in a social media post on Tuesday. Trump added that he looks forward to meeting with them if they can get serious about the future of our nation. We must keep the government open and legislate like true patriots rather than hold American citizens hostage. The president's preconditions upend the Thursday Oval Office meeting that had been planned with Senate Democrat leader Chuck Schumer and House Democrat leader Hakeem Jeffries. Republicans need at least 7 Democrats' votes to pass a government funding bill in the Senate, given the minority party leverage in the talks. Quote, Trump is running away from the negotiating table before he even gets there, Schumer said in response, adding that the president would rather throw a tantrum than do his job. Big claims. Trump also plans H-1B lottery overhaul to prioritize higher earnings. The Trump administration is proposing major changes to the selection process for H-1B visas, heavily used by the tech industry, basing allocation on skill level required and wages offered for a position instead of the current randomized lottery. The proposal released Tuesday is the latest effort by President Trump to overhaul the H-1B program, which has become a lightning rod in conservative circles as critics argue that recipients displace American workers. The proposal wouldn't base visa allocation strictly on highest wages offered. Instead, it would assign each prospective worker to 4 wage bands based on Labor Department surveys. Their odds of selection would be based on the wage level to which they are assigned. Workers in the highest of the 4 wage levels, earning an average of an annual salary of $162,528, would be entered into the selection pool 4 times. Those in the lowest tier would be entered only once. That process would favor the allocation of H-1B visas to higher skilled and higher paid aliens, while maintaining the opportunity for employers to secure H-1B workers at all wage levels, the proposal said. The administration, which made the mass deportation campaign its priority in its first months, is now pursuing major overhauls of the employment-based visa programs. Late last week, the White House issued a proclamation slapping a $100,000 fee on new H-1B petitions as a condition to enter the United States. The proclamation initially created panic among employers and workers before the administration clarified that it would only be imposed on new petitions. Both that fee, which took effect September 21, and the new wage-based visa selection process are likely to face legal challenges. The visa program is limited to just 85,000 new slots each year, although higher education and research-based organizations are exempt from that cap. Employers with online registration selected in the annual lottery can move forward with filing a petition. H-1B regulations finalized near the end of first Trump administration, but later withdrawn by President Joe Biden, will have prioritized selection of H-1B entries based on 4 tiers of wage levels to discourage using the visas to fill lower-paid, less skilled positions. The Department of Labor also attempted to narrow the occupations that qualified for the specialty occupation visas among the other regulatory changes under Buy American, Hire American agenda in the first Trump administration. Trump links autism to Tylenol and vaccines, claims not backed by science. US President Trump on Monday linked autism to childhood vaccine use and taking of popular pain medication Tylenol by women when pregnant, evaluating claims not backed by scientific evidence to the forefront of the US health policy. In an extraordinary news conference at the White House, the Republican president delivered medical advice to pregnant women and parents of young children, repeatedly telling them not to use or administer the painkiller and suggesting that common vaccines not be taken together or so early in a child's life. The advice from Trump, who acknowledged he's not a doctor, goes against that of medical societies, which cite data from numerous studies showing that acetaminophen, the active ingredient in Tylenol, plays a safe role in the well-being of pregnant women. Quote, I want to say like it is, don't take Tylenol. Don't take it, Trump said. Quote, other things that we recommend, or certainly I do anyway, is don't let them pump your baby up with the largest pile of stuff you've ever seen in your life, end quote, he said, referring to vaccines. The widely used over-the-counter pain relief medication is also known generically as paracetamol elsewhere. Trump's team suggested leucovorin, a form of folic acid, as a treatment for autism symptoms. Dozens of medical research and autism advocacy groups, including the American Academy of Pediatrics and American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, decried the president's announcement. Quote, the data cited do not support the claim that Tylenol causes autism and leucovorin is a cure, and only stoke fear and falsely suggest hope when there is no simple answer. End quote, the Coalition of Autism Scientists said in a statement. Standing by the Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a vaccine critic who has argued that no vaccine is safe, Trump called for a re-examination of link between vaccines and autism, a theory that has been repeatedly debunked. Quote, we believe independent sound science clearly shows that taking acetaminophen does not cause autism. We strongly disagree with any suggestion otherwise, and we are deeply concerned with the health risk that this poses for expectant mothers and parents, can view, the maker of Tylenol said in a statement. The Britain's health regulator said on Monday it is safe to use the pain relief treatment, paracetamol, and there is no evidence of causing autism in children. We're going to skip this one because we covered it. Now, switching back to macroeconomics, U.S. current account deficit narrows sharply in second quarter. The U.S. current account deficit contracted by the most on record on second quarter as a flood of imports subsided. The Commerce Department's Bureau of Economic Analysis said Tuesday the current account deficit, which measures the flow of goods, services, and investments into and out of the country, decreased by a record $188.5 billion, or 43%, to $251 billion, reversing the prior month's jump. Data for the first quarter was revised to show the gap at $440 billion, still an all-time high instead of $450 billion as previously reported. Economists polled by Reuters had forecast the current account deficit declining to $257 billion last quarter. The deficit represented 3.3% of gross domestic product, the smallest share since the third quarter of 2023, down from 5.9% in the January-March quarter. It peaked at 6.3% in the third quarter of 2006. President Trump's tariffs have caused wild swings in goods imports this year, undercutting GDP in the first quarter before boosting growth in the April to June quarter. Trump's unpredictable economic, trade, and security policies have also spurred questions over whether the dollar, which accounts for 58% of the world's reserves, can remain at the center of the global monetary system. Imports of goods declined by a record $185 billion to $820 billion last quarter. There were decreases in imports of non-monetary gold, consumer goods, as well as industrial supplies and minerals, which include crude oil. Okay, switching to the Fed. Fed's Goolsbee on CNBC says Fed has room to cut rates. Fed Reserve Bank of Chicago President Austin Goolsbee said Tuesday if inflation cools off, the central bank has some space to cut into interest rate target. Quote, I think eventually, at a gradual pace, rates can come down a fair amount if we can get this stagflationary dust out of the air, end quote, Goolsbee said in an interview with CNBC. In terms of where the Fed can go versus current target range of between 4 and 4.25%, Goolsbee said a neutral rate is something like 100 to 125 basis points lower than that, noting, quote, ultimately the rate might settle around 3% with inflation at 2%, and I'm comfortable with that as a marker, end quote. Goolsbee, who is a voting member of the interest rate FOMC, spoke after last week's decision by the central bank to cut its target by a quarter of a percentage point. While officials remain worried about overly high levels of inflation, they are also seeking to offset risks to the job market by lowering the cost of short-term borrowing. Goolsbee said in his TV appearance that when it comes to Fed policy, I think we are restrictive, mildly restrictive. He also noted inflation risks remain real. Quote, with inflation having been over the target for 4.5 years in a row and rising, I think we need to be a little careful with getting overly upfront aggressive, end quote, with interest rate cuts. But he added, quote, labor market continues to cool at a sort of a mild to modest pace. The Chicago Fed released a report Tuesday offering that it hopes is a real-time read on unemployment, which projected the unemployment rate most likely held steady in September at 4.3%. Company-specific news, Firefly falls on missed revenue after inaugural earnings. Firefly Aerospace shares declined after second quarter revenue came in short of Wall Street's expectations as a small rocket launcher works to ramp up the frequency of its flights and win new contracts. The Cedar Park, Texas-based company posted revenue of $15.5 million after the close of trading on Monday, compared with the roughly $16.1 million expected on average by analysts. It was Firefly's first quarterly earnings report after an IPO on August 7. Firefly dropped 12%, falling below its IPO price of $45. Next, Alloy is bringing data management to the robotics industry. Robotics companies often have to deal with a simple but confounding problem. Robots produce a lot of data. Even a simple robot can easily produce up to a terabyte of data per day since they continuously capture data from cameras and sensors. Sydney, Australia-based Alloy thinks it can help that issue. The startup is building data infrastructure for robotics companies to help them process and organize all the data their robots collect from various sources, including sensors and cameras. At its core, Alloy encodes and labels the data it collects and allows users to search through their data using natural language for finding bugs and errors. Users can also set up rules to catch and flag issues in the future, similar to how observability tools flag errors in software code. Quote, the current pattern is you'll look for some kind of anomaly and then you'll replay the data, end quote. Joe Harris, the founder and CEO of Alloy, told TechCrunch. They then spent hours scrubbing through this data, looking for these issues, and they had been flagged for them, trying to diagnose from that while not really having a good view as to whether this has happened before, if it's a high severity issue or this one-off edge case. Considering how much data a single robot produces, as robotics companies look to scale, this data problem will continue to compound, Harris added. Harris has been fascinated by robotics since he was a kid, but when he graduated from college in 2018, where there weren't many opportunities to work in the field. So instead, he worked multiple roles across Australian tech companies, including Atlassian and telehealth startup Eucalyptus. In 2024, he decided the time was right to launch a robotics company of his own. He originally thought he'd focus on building robots for the agriculture industry due to an interest in vertical farming. But when he started talking to other founders, the issue of managing the data robots produce kept coming up. He figured he might as well solve that problem first. Quote, if I need to solve this problem for myself and for a robotics company, I will have a great horizontal solution, Harris said. Perhaps that would be a more important near-term mission to help enable other robotics companies to spend less time on data plumbing and more time on getting to that high reliability. And on that note, thank you very much, everybody, and I will chat with you all next time. Take care.